Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. NBC News chief global correspondent Bill Neely explains this one.
Hi, Alison. Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years, not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected, at least until now. And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the US Armed Forces. Well, we did ask the White House, the Department of Defense and Israeli officials to comment. So far, they have not responded to the NBC News request, and I wonder if they ever will. Alison.
President-elect Joe Biden formally introducing his team of health experts today and announcing a three-part plan to fight the coronavirus in his first 100 days in office.
It's not a secret how to do it. Masking, vaccinations, opening schools. These are the three key goals for my first 100 days.
NBC News correspondent Mike Memoli joining me now from Wilmington, Delaware. Mike, what else did Joe Biden say about his 100-day plan to fight COVID?
Well, Alison, we tuned in to the Biden event today expecting a personnel announcement, and we got something of a surprising policy discussion in terms of Biden setting these very clear goals for his first 100 days. We know he's been reading a lot about FDR, really leaning in to setting some benchmarks for him. And you touched on it there, these three key goals he's setting. First, we've talked so much about masking. He wants to make sure that the country is masking up. He says as a patriotic act, he's going to try to mandate that where he can on federal property, but lean on the states and local governments to try to impose some new mandates as well. Talked about the idea of getting states the help that they need, especially as it relates to this issue of getting vaccines. He wants 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days. And then, of course, lastly, this idea of making sure students can get back into the classrooms. Now, I think it was interesting that he was leaning into this idea of the first 100 days and also the tone he was setting. Take a listen to how he presented, I think, a pretty clear-eyed assessment of what's ahead for him.
My first 100 days won't end the COVID-19 virus. I can't promise that. But we did not get into this mess quickly. We're not going to get out of it quickly. It's going to take some time. But I'm absolutely convinced that in 100 days we can change the course of the disease and change life in America for the better.
You can't separate that sort of tone from the president-elect from what you were just talking to Monica about in terms of what we saw at the White House today. You know, Biden trying to sort of offer, as Kamala Harris put it today, the idea that help is on the way, but also to really, you know, underscore the fact that Americans can't expect this to change overnight, that there's a pretty big hole that's been dug for him, and he's only just starting to try to dig out of it, Allison.